Welcome to Peace Beyond the Pulpit. We're your hosts, Vicar William Dale Rowland
and DCE Kim Austin. We're bringing Sunday morning concepts into the Monday to Saturday realities.
We'll be talking about the things you want to hear as disciples of Jesus Christ.
Your burning questions about theology and doctrine.
How we should respond to what's happening in the news.
And what happens when real discipleship meets real world application.
This is Peace Beyond the Pulpit. Hey, how's it going, everybody?
Hello.
We'll go straight into it, yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Great for full. I'm stumbling over my words. I am grateful for those of you who have been tuning in and subscribing to this show.
Yeah.
As it pops up on YouTube. And if you feel like you don't have time to watch it, it's also available on Spotify.
Yep.
You can look for Peace Beyond the Pulpit Season 4, and those new episodes are popping in there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We drop a new one every Wednesday, correct?
Yeah, every Wednesday morning. You can check those out, and that's going to continue beyond Lent. I think we're looking at maybe end of the school year kind of time frame to wrap up this season and give everyone a little break before we get into the fall.
Yeah.
Because in church calendar, everything is here before you know it. Right?
Always. It's already October in the church calendar.
There's never a period of like being bored.
For sure not. For sure not.
You just roll it over and then you're thinking about, hey, what can I do next year? Or
right.
How can we improve?
Yeah.
All those things.
Yeah.
So. All right. So I kind of threw this topic out. I thought it would be good after last week's episode about church and state to talk about church politics. And I don't mean politics within church. I hope we kind of made that abundantly clear last time, is that no, there's actually a good balance between church and state relations. Yeah. That give freedom to the church, actually. But what I thought I'd start with is the biblical example of church politics, so that we can kind of see what structure should look like, ideally, and then we'll go from there. Cool. So this is from Exodus 18.
Okay.
Starting in verse 13, and this is Moses' father-in-law has come to visit, and he has brought Moses' family to join him where they're at, where the people of Israel are at, still in the wilderness. So Jethro is the name of his father-in-law.
And this is pre-receiving the Ten Commandments.
Yes.
That happens, they're laid out in chapter 20.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah. Nope, you're right. So starting in verse 13, it says, "The next day Moses sat to judge the people, and the people stood around Moses from morning till evening. When Moses' father-in-law saw that all that he was doing for the people, he said, 'What is this that you are doing for the people? Why do you sit alone, and all the people stand around you from morning till evening?' And Moses said to his father-in-law, 'Because the people come to me to inquire of God. When they have a dispute, they come to me, and I decide between one person and another. And I make them know the statutes of God and his laws.' Moses' father-in-law said to him, 'What you are doing is not good. You and the people with you will certainly wear yourselves out, for the thing is too heavy for you. You are not able to do it alone. Now obey my voice. I will give you advice, and God be with you. You shall represent the people before God and bring their cases to God. And you shall warn them about the statutes and the laws and make them know the way in which they must walk and what they must do. Moreover, look for able men from all the people, men who fear God, who are trustworthy and hate a bribe, and place such men over the people as chiefs of thousands, hundreds, of fifties, and of tens. And let them judge the people at all times. Every great matter they shall bring to you, but any small matter they shall decide for themselves. So it will be easier for you, and they will bear the burden with you. If you do this, God will direct you, and you will be able to endure. And all this people will also go to their place in peace." So that's kind of, I thought that was a good basis for thinking about church politics and really like what it really is, and I was afraid to throw this word out there, but church governance, like how is the church governed within itself? And I know we have our own specific governing structure, and I've had a few people that have joined in the last couple of years that I've actually had to break down. Hey, here's how the LCM they were interested in what our church governance is. So you might have actually a better grasp on that than I do.
You know,
a little.
My understanding is that most LCMS churches operate in one of two different ways of governance.
Okay.
Right. And so the way that I've had it most easily explained to me is that many smaller churches operate in what's called a board governed.
Yeah.
And larger churches tend to operate in a policy based, which is how we operate here at Peace. But I will say, Peace has not been policy based for that long. There are many people here who are members of Peace still who remember when they were
that
board
transition
governed.
happened. Okay.
And that can be a really hard transition for churches because it's a completely different way of operating. And I would say, in my experience, I definitely have a personal preference. But I don't think that either one is bad or good. Right?
Yeah.
They both work. They both can work well in various churches, depending on kind of the culture of that church and of the community it's in.
And I've also heard, because we have both, that there was no drastic change, but apparently I guess most LCMS churches are going to have either a board of elders or a board or like a board of directors, not necessarily both. Is that typical? I know you've been at some larger churches. You've probably been at smaller churches too.
I'm trying to think. As far as like my called churches, most of my churches have been pretty sizable, and they've all been policy based, and they do have a board of elders, and they typically have some other kind of executive board, right? And that's the function of Peace's board of directors is it deals with all the executive matters of the church, not the spiritual matters. And so I think even you might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe a listener who's really well versed in their LCMS knowledge. I believe that one of the things required in order to be an LCMS congregation is minimum you have to have a called pastor and a board of elders. So you have to have a shepherd, and you have to have a group of people who are caring spiritually for their people. I mean, really laid out a lot like
exactly like that verse.
Exodus 18, right? That's bare minimum. Right. I think in a board governed church, the board of directors is made up of the heads of these committees. So you might have a board of Sunday school, a board of youth ministry, a board of stewardship, a board of, I know, trustees, that's essentially like they take care of the building and grounds, right? And so the heads of those boards essentially kind of make up what we might understand to be a board of directors. But they kind of take all those different pieces. Like I would say board of directors coupled with what we have as staff, right? So you might have you have a secretary who might be in charge of things that now have been kind of absorbed by some of the staff here. You have a treasurer. You have a treasurer who handles, some things that now is handled by HR and our board or our director of operations, right? So you have, and that's why that typically operates better in a smaller church, is because you don't have the means to hire HR, maintenance, full-time admins, full-time, communications. You don't have the means to bring on a full-time person in that role, and you maybe don't have the programming and the structure either to warrant that to be a full-time role.
And I think because we're discipleship people, I want to go ahead and say we also where we have our board of directors really handles the business. The business of the church is really how it works. So they're going to handle things like budget and and church, like they represent the congregation ideally.
Mission, vision, direction. A lot of times.
Dang, like that's probably exactly it. Mission, vision, direction. She had the words. She's so smart.
Thanks, Concordia University, Nebraska.
But they also, I think, I want to recognize that the people on that board, we also expect to have a good spiritual ground for making those decisions.
Yes.
Because it's really easy to mix secular business with not even just like, you could almost say nonprofit business, but no, the church should actually be more than just a nonprofit.
Yeah.
Like we have a true spiritual vision and mission.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so our board really tries to think through those business decisions in a spiritual way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the board of elders, like you said, ideally they're able to speak faith into the lives of those families, especially in a larger church. When you only have a pastor or 2 or 3 pastors even, like it is hard to get to everybody and make yourself completely available to I think we worship about 450 on a Sunday. That's not to count all the people who are worshiping at home. That's that's all the people that we don't see every Sunday. The kind of fluctuation in that. So yeah, if you're taking care of 600 people, 700 people, then it's like, yeah, that's a lot to get to.
Yeah.
That's a lot to make yourself available for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you really have this spiritual matter that you need to talk about. I don't have the hour to talk about it right now.
Right.
But I'd love to.
Yeah. But here's an incredible group of men who are, who are skilled at that kind of a thing. And then those men, it makes me think a lot of kind of Jesus and his 12 disciples. He's got these 12 people that he's really close with.
Yeah.
And then those people have this greater reach, right? Yeah. That then the disciples can come to Jesus. Yeah. Not to say that, our pastors are Jesus, but our elders can then come to our pastoral leadership and say, hey, these people, might need some extra care, or they might need some extra resourcing, or they might need, And
that's such a good way to think about it, because Jesus sent out the 12 and they came back and kind of reported. And that's kind of the way that we hope it works is not that, not the pastoral staff is completely absent from the equation.
Absolutely.
But that have a greater reach and depend on the gifts of others.
Yeah. That's exponential leadership, right?
There you go.
That's equipping and sending the saints.
And celebrating that variety, right? So that's kind of within the specific congregation.
Yeah.
And then a congregation, we have the different levels, right? So you have a circuit that you might be a part of, and that's a group of churches that are kind of within driving distance of each other.
Yeah.
I know some of the rural churches probably further. And then I know in our area, we have areas that kind of even break down bigger groups of circuits.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say is this is how the Texas district operates.
Yeah.
Some other districts things are very accessible here in the Metroplex and in other large cities in Texas. There's several churches that are close to us so that you can have these circuits that, but other districts, your circuit may be wider just because of being rural. Maybe it's not a high Lutheran area.
Yeah,
and
totally.
And those sorts of things.
Yeah, you're in a town where you don't necessarily have, and the next town is 30 minutes away. Yeah. So I know I've talked to some guys who, they don't meet as frequently as we get to, but it's still good to have that kind of collaboration of churches.
Yes.
And that also sets up a way for individual congregations to have their voice heard, ideally at a national level.
Yeah.
So we kind of have our circuits and then districts that break down. So Kim mentioned the Texas district. There are districts for just about every state. I think when you get into the Northeast, it starts grouping New England district and different things like that. And
I think the LCMS has 35-ish districts. Yep. So some states have multiple districts.
Yeah, I believe that.
some states are, like you said, grouped in. Some states are kind of split.
Yeah.
So when we lived in Kentucky, we were actually we were in Louisville, and that part of Kentucky was in the Indiana district.
Oh, okay.
But other parts of Kentucky were in the Mid-South district.
Because Louisville is literally across the river.
Across the river from Indiana. So some states are kind of, part of a state might be in one district and part of a state could be in another district.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how those lines. And then we have two districts, fun fact. And I can't think of the name of one of them now, but we have two districts who are non-geographical.
Oh, okay.
So
I think
one is the English district, and I actually have a really good friend who's a pastor in the English district, and he's in Ohio.
Okay.
But they're non-geographical, so they could be anywhere. Okay. And I can't remember what the second one is. I can't remember the name of it.
English district. Where did they get that name?
I couldn't tell you.
Because it makes me think of there was an old show about Amish community, and they called non-Amish English.
Maybe.
Oh man, see, I don't know. I'm just going down rabbit holes at this point.
Yeah, I don't know that many facts. I just know that there's two non-geographical.
So we have the districts.
Yep.
Yeah, and the districts have a district president. And then
really a whole staff, right?
Yeah.
There's a vice. There's there's a lot of people.
Yeah,
that make up the district,
and it's a very good thing because what I love about our structure is that we do have a lot of checks and balances in place. Yeah, and then from the districts, just to finish explaining that, then from the districts we have like synodical leadership, and that is the national leadership of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, that is what I love about our structure as far as a denomination goes. Is now there's a lot of people that you'd have to go through to really mess things up, right? And that's probably a little bit of my anarchist background, where I just want to push against leadership. But there's comfort, I think, in knowing that that one person can't make such drastic changes,
right,
that they couldn't be either undone or stopped in their tracks,
right.
There would have to be a lot that would go wrong. I also love, and I've talked about this with a lot of people, is depending on the LCMS church you visit, you might have a completely different experience.
Yeah.
Every congregation is so different.
Yeah.
you have many congregations that still stick to the divine service as it's written in the Lutheran service book. We stick to the divine service, but we remove some of the names from that.
Yeah.
So we're actually still doing a lot of that stuff. Pretty much all of it in our traditional worship. And then most of it, like at least the what we call like the four most important elements we're doing, word and sacrament ministry, even within our modern service. But I love that every church looks so different.
Yeah.
I kind of like that because that just means there's not an overlord that's telling all of us how to do it.
Yeah.
We actually we agree to a set of theological doctrines and values.
Yes. And I think even at the heart of Lutheranism, I think this is what I love about it, is that we find our unity in that doctrine that comes straight out of Scripture, that we believe is the interpretation of Scripture. Yeah. Because then it allows each congregation, each district, each area, each circuit to express that in the way that makes the most sense for their context, right? Yeah. Like, even if you just think a church in Texas is not at all going to look the same as a church in California because the contexts are so different. A church in Texas in the Metroplex is not at all going to look like a church in the middle of Montana. Yeah. The contexts are completely different, but our governance, the way that we're structured as a synod, allows us to speak directly to the people in that community who we're trying to reach with the gospel, right?
Exactly.
In a way that is relatable to them without compromising anything in our doctrine and beliefs.
And that is where, I was so scared coming into a church body that had the confessions. So the Lutheran confessions, it was something that scared me more or less. And that was just like not knowing, not understanding. But the more that I read them, the more that I get into them, the more I recognize, that's actually, no, this is really good. This is hundreds of years of faithfully adhering to Scripture.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what the confessions do. If you've never read them, what they do is, it's not that they expect you that Martin Luther or for some reason the other guy's name is
Walther. No, not
Walther. Oh man, it's totally slipping my mind. Martin Luther, and who was the other main writer? Oh man, it's totally slipping me.
I should know this answer, but I don't. Maybe I shouldn't have plugged my university earlier.
I know. See, we should. Yeah, now we're gonna have to unplug and go back.
I know.
It's gonna pop into my head right.
Yeah. Right when we hit.
Right when we
mute.
hit stop.
Yeah.
But those writers, they were actually trying to drive people to Scripture.
Yeah.
At a time when the Bible was not as readily available as it is now, where it's on every shelf in every home. No, it's like the wealthy people had a Bible, the religious leaders had a Bible. They're trying to drive people to read this newly available Bible.
Right.
And that's what the confessions really do. So that's why I actually love love the confessions now, because I also recognize, they keep if we ever had synodical leadership, at the top of our national synod, try to come to our church, try to come to Peace Lutheran Church and say, hey, you need to be doing it this way. Well, what we could say is, we are submissive to the confessions. Because we believe they are the correct and accurate and faithful interpretation of Scripture. Not so we're going to practice the way that we're going to practice. So and I think Martin Luther encouraged that in his writings.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think even as a synod, we practice that. If you're unaware, every 3 years we have a national convention of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. And part of that is to gather together and celebrate.
Yeah.
Right? It's to celebrate, what God is doing through all of our churches and districts and circuits all over the country. But it's also to kind of raise up some of these things and say, what does this look like today?
Yeah.
How do we practice this faithfully as our doctrine and confessions teach it today?
Yeah.
For today's context.
Are we still adhering to the confessions?
Yeah. Yeah.
And to that end, are we still adhering to Scripture?
Yes.
As a church body?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's always a lot of tension, and I don't want to just completely comb over that, but there's always some tension that happens when everybody gets together, and we all have such diversity of congregations and districts and all of that. But in the end, we all still say, no, we're going to walk together.
Yes.
Because, we agree to the creeds, we agree to the confessions, we agree to ultimately Scripture.
Yeah.
In the same way. So we can continue walking together. And that's a wonderful thing.
It is. Yeah. It's a neat thing. And I think it's good. I mean, just like that kind of conversation is healthy in your home.
Yeah.
That kind of conversation can be very healthy and beneficial in the context of our church body.
Absolutely.
Right. And it is probably necessary. I think if we didn't revisit some of these things over the last 500 years, I don't know that we would be having this conversation in this context, right? And so to just really continue to review and look and just have those checks and balances, like you said, I think is healthy and necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's good.
Cool.
Yeah. I hope that was uplifting for you guys.
Yeah.
It really, I think it all points back to faithfulness.
Yeah.
Like God's people trying to be faithful to stick to his word, and I think to exhort and encourage one another.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's why the idea of church politics is actually more important than we may realize.
Yeah. And I would say if there's any questions that y'all have to further this conversation, please reach out to us. That's why we're here. That's why we do these podcasts is we want to know what questions you have and how we can address them. And so if there's something we mentioned that doesn't sit right with you or you want to know more about, I guess comment on YouTube or email us at info@peacechurch.org and we can either reach out to you directly or we can tackle another topic.
Absolutely.
On this podcast.
No, that's really good. Yeah, that is the point of this is Kim and I love making disciples. We love building up disciples. So that's what we're here for.
Yep. All right. Till next time.
See ya.
Bye, y'all. Thanks for joining us. If you have questions or a topic that you'd like to hear us discuss, send it to info@peacechurch.org.
You can find information about our services and what's happening at Peace by visiting www.peacechurch.org.
Take care.
And we'll see you next time.